any of the measurements or proportions right now, but I'll just get it started. Put in 6 cups of boiling water.
And this is just all-purpose flour?
I'll talk about that too.
Okay.
This is, so basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a major portion of the water that's been boiled and adding it to a little, it's basically 3/4 of the water that'll end up in the whole mass is in there now, and a little bit over half of the flour that'll be used. There's no yeast in there. If you bake before, boiling water will kill yeast. So essentially what this does is, for the Russian style loaves, it's a usually very dense bread. So we don't want a lot of particles going around in the altar. So what this does is it just kind of sets the dough off. Not exactly sure what it does, but it basically, it starts out and it makes kind of like a clay-like consistency, and it gives a nice base for a very firm dough. So, and I'll just do that, mix it mostly, and then let it sit for about 10 minutes. So at 2:30, I have another set in there, but okay. This is the other quarter of the water here, and I'll just let it sit to come to room temperature.
Yeah.
So it started like that, and I let it sit, and then mix it after about 10 minutes. Get matters on the mass of the dough, and then basically I'll just let it sit until it's cool enough. Other surgeons taught me that a good indicator of if the temperature of something, even if it has a slight sting, like when you put your finger into water, your blood is usually 98 degrees. 110 degrees is the maximum that is the maximum temperature that will, right before it kills the yeast.
I see.
So if you put your hand on something and even feel a slight sting into like warm dough or something, even if it has a slight sting, it means it's just slightly hotter than 98. And so you just simply let it sit until to the touch it's fine, and it should be good for the yeast. So
Okay.
I guess, do you have a mixer first of all?
We have like beaters, with the, like making it,
With the dough hook? Or is it,
well, just like a handheld thing with the two beaters on the bottom,
do you have an attachment that is like a dough hook, kind of something that's wiggled?
There would be, I suppose we could check into something like that.
Yeah, they also, pardon me, these are basically almost done here, so you kind of get the beginning and the end here. Usually bake them until they're golden brown on the tops and the bottoms. So you need a little more time. Just usually spray some water in there so they don't dry out completely.
So that you sprayed on the walls of the oven?
Yeah,
Not
I've
necessarily
tried before by, if you can put a tray in the bottom with water to steam it. And I've done that before, and I didn't like what it did because it made the outside look like bagels or something, because bagels are they're boiled quickly and then they're baked, and so that kind of had an effect on it, and it got a little too hard on the crust, and so
I
simply
see.
just rehydrate the air every time.
But you don't spray it directly onto the loaves?
No, I used to. Found if it got too much water on there, it would kind of. You want the seals to be really distinct on top.
Mhm.
So they do make countertop mixers that will hold. This is a 20 quart. They have ones that have 5 quarts. What's going to end up in this bowl will be split up. This is half of one one round for me, half of one batch, and basically that gives me about 6 5-loaf sets. And so I'm assuming you'll do the Russian style, right?
Right.
Greeks, well, everyone else usually makes the large loaves.
Yeah, I have a stamp for the Greek ones, so I have to get a stamp set for the
Okay.
Russian.
Yeah, the Greek one just basically, it has all these on it. But
Yeah.
you'll need to just, if you can get these. These are hand carved, I guess, from Athos or something.
And they have those in Hiram at the
They do?
Skeet
Or are
up
you
there.
asking?
I was asking. Yeah, I
Oh,
think someone mentioned they might.
I'm not sure, not positive, but I mean, it should be able to look.
Yeah, I'm sure I could find them online if nothing else.
Yeah, so now this can be done by hand. I've never done these large amounts by hand. I guess the first thing to clarify would be what, if you want to get equipped for it, like what setup would you do? Do you want to just stick to using the hand beater, or do you want to use? What do you think you'll pick up?
Well, we probably wouldn't be doing too many at once because it's only our 4 of us that are Orthodox at this point. So
Yeah,
we'd probably start with a very small.
I mean 1 liturgy a week, or
Probably even maybe one a month to start because I'm just
Okay.
starting to learn the ropes, and it may.
okay. So I guess what's your experience with breads at all, baking?
I've made white bread.
White
before.
Okay. So this dough, when you make them, they're usually probably more fluffy or something. This dough is, well, the flour, first of all, we've used all-purpose. Again, the idea is to get a dough that's very dense but still chewy, like when you had the antieron, it's very dense. It doesn't have many crumbs. It's not messy, and so it's good, especially for use on the altar. And this flour, I don't know where you can pick it up, but this flour lends itself to that well. If you're familiar with kulich bread, the Russian, the Easter
yeah.
bread,
Mm-hmm.
I use this for those too, and it's good for that because kulich have to rise very high, and the problem with that is you usually get bubbles when it's rising, but the right consistency, this will fill out, and it has a dense crumb without many bubbles, and it's still chewy. It's not very dried out. So Hudson cream. You can use any other, like Better for Bread flour is another one. King Arthur, I guess white bread flour or something. You don't use whole wheat. You use the white flour. This is okay. This is bleached. So usually you'd get a bleached kind.
But it's not the self-rising because you're using wheat yeast.
Yeah, and also because according to the church canons, the only ingredients are flour. I guess yeast is allowed before it be natural leaven, but flour, yeast, water, salt.
I see.
And you usually don't use. You can get a blessing from. I think it would be wise to get it from the bishop to use like Pam nonstick spray, but what we do is we use beeswax because that's actually the practice is heating up the pans, and then you'll see once I take these loaves off, I'll cook the pan again. So these will still bake a little more. Sorry, I'm kind of scattered. I'm just trying to pull it together and try to deliver the whole process. And I have it written out too, very kind of detailed. And so I can give you that too, and maybe make some extra notes on it. So between this and between verbal and video camera or any written notes and my own recipe, you can hopefully pull it together.
Good. And so your baking temperature is 350?
Yeah, 350, which is basically, it's pretty general temperature for most
For
baking
breads.
things. So, let's see. I guess, so like I said, what I'm doing here is 3/4 of the water is boiled, put into here, and pretty soon what I'll do is I'll add the rest of the flour, the portion of salt, and then I'll get this water to the right temperature, mix in the yeast, and just pour it over the mixture and mix it for no more than 10 minutes. Again, if this is done by hand, you're used to obviously kneading by hand, or how long does it usually take, you know, when you put the ingredients together to kind of getting a smooth lump of dough? Do you know how long it usually takes you? Or
It's been a long time, maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
yeah, that sounds about right. Okay. Of course, this is a lot more forceful and vigorous, so that would probably be an equivalent time. So basically, this will be mixed until it's just, you know, pretty smooth and gathered together. And if it's too dense, you know, you can just let it rest. We use, believe it or not, trash bags, non-scented, which lend themselves for when we dry it. We'll put it on here and, you know, cover it with the towels and put this over it to retain the moisture and let it sit overnight. But even for working with the dough, like once it comes out and mixed and you need to let it rest for a little while, covering it with this will keep nice moisture.
Okay.
You don't have to do that, but it works better than saran wrap. And the saran wrap just kind of breaks everywhere. So there's not much more I can really explain at this point about the dough, but I guess if you're mixing up, you know, basically you'll just need to make 5 of these loaves for one liturgy.
So having a machine like this saves with all the kneading, or you also have to do kneading?
You do a little kneading, but just to kind of shape the dough. This does the majority of the work.
I see.
So the
Yeah.
power goes out here so frequently that
Oh,
I need to, I've never done this whole batch like this for our purposes all by hand, so I'd like to do that, but made other breads by hand. It's just, you know, it's a different, you have to figure out your timing and everything like that.
yeah, some of the recipes I read online, they talked about, you know, it just seemed like it was a lot of strenuous kneading that had to take place.
Yeah, mostly in the first, you know, this will be kind of messy if you're doing this, you know, where you add your boiled water to a portion of the flour. You just, basically you would just kind of, you know, work the water. You can see there's a lot of kind of dry stuff there, which doesn't matter. The majority of what's in there is like I said, kind of like Play-Doh.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, it just gives it a nice base for the rest of the bread. So thank God these are keeping shape. The bottoms crack a little, of course. It you know, for most of these, you're taking the portion out of the Mother of God from the top. You can get, you know, you want the surfaces to be, of course, without any bubbles. You know, you'll get a few bubbles here and there, but the majority of these, they come out.
Now this tray that you have is just like an aluminum.
Yeah, it's if you look at the bottom, it's one of those. They call it like air baking. It lends itself to a more even bake. And basically, what it has is two parts put together, and it has it basically makes a pocket of air. You know, I don't know if you have. It just works well for having an even bake. Like this, you can see that they have it's put together, and in here is air. You shouldn't immerse these into water when you're washing them. as for myself, for these, unless there's a big buildup from wax and dough sticking to it, I don't usually wash them. It's just because coating with the beeswax is very good, and even these might not even need any beeswax or anything. But
So it's actually the flat side though that you put the dough on?
yeah, the function of this is just to make a pocket of hot air, and so rather than a direct heat going to the bottom of the pan, because ovens have hot spots and cooler spots, and so basically the heat goes into there, and then it disperses in the air pocket there, and it makes for a more even bake.
Okay.
Um,
How would that compare with like a pizza stone? We do have one of those. I don't know if that's an alternative.
I think pizza stones it's the same concept.
I think they have underneath, they have that.
No, they don't have that, but the pizza stone, when you're baking on something stone, it usually disperses the heat evenly.
Uh-huh.
So that should be, that's probably more ideal than using the metal pans. So
See how it works.
yeah, you just, again, lots of trial and error and everything, and sometimes these loaves, they crack and split on the sides or something, and you can get around it. Like if there's bubbles under here for the 9 ranks, you pull out very small portions, and if you only get the surface, it's not ideal, but in the process of learning it, you can explain to her too what's going on with each of the loaves. When if you want, I can go through that too. It's good to know what's happening with the bread you're making. So when we take them out, most of these are getting nice and golden brown, and so that's a good indicator that they're cooked through. And so basically going to say these are all okay. Do you have cooling racks that are raised?
No, we probably have to get something like, I know Lowe's has metal shelves like that. They have the.
They also have, you don't need a large unit like this, but basically, just they have little like cookie racks or something like that, which would work all right. So comes out hot like that, and then just usually get the excess off so it doesn't glob up on the bottom of the loaves, and just disperse it about the whole thing, and that makes a nice.
So you don't even have to wash in
Yeah.
between batches.
Yeah, usually, you can see it's been used, and this will start to build up because of wax, and sometimes the bottom of the loaves will stick a little bit, but for the most part they don't, and so, you can, you can scratch that off, otherwise it might stick onto the loaves, but again, it's pretty much, you apply it, let it cool, and then just store it again for the next time, and it's already ready with the wax on it. So, pardon me, I need to get in the fridge for the next ones here. This is just put the towel over it and then have the bag, keep it moist. I put them in the fridge because this dough you don't have much rising with it. Most of the rising is in the oven. And so if I have some in the oven, again, it's probably not going to be a real big deal with you because you probably won't have two batches. But if for some reason it can't go in the oven, or you forgot to turn the oven on and it needs to preheat or something, just you can let the loaves rest in the fridge to stop the rising process. Yeah, it'll slow the yeast down. So now this should be ready. I'm just going to mix it again, and then check it with hand and see. So it's warm, but it's not too hot. So I'll add flour. Again, the amounts I'm using are large. We'll have to figure out maybe something that'll, and of course trial and error, you know, you can figure out how much you can get for the
Proportions of what you,
like I said, this will make, this whole thing here is about 8 pounds of flour, which is 1 3/5 of these 5-pound bags. 8 cups of water in total, 1.5 tablespoons of salt, and less than 2 teaspoons of yeast. Now the thing is here, every area, you know, Maine is different than West Virginia, so the climate is, yeast reactions are going to be different, and so that's just something you figure out. You know, if you have too much yeast with it, if it's rising too much, you'll get a lot of bubbles in it, even though it doesn't rise much, and I'll show you how to deal with that too. But so I'm adding the rest of the flour, adding the salt.
is that just regular table salt?
Yeah, just they call it Morton's or whatever. But
Does it matter if it's iodized or not iodized? Or?
this is iodized, but it doesn't matter. Essentially, salt, what it does is it balances the yeast. It'll prevent, you know, the more salt you have, the more it'll buffer the effect of the yeast. And so there's just a little bit of it. A lot of doughs that people have is they don't taste very salty. I don't know if you know if you've tasted different Antietam or anything, or if you can compare it to what we have here. But somebody mentioned to me that ours has a little more salt. It's not salty, but you can just feel it has like a fuller flavor. Really not a big deal. So again, it's fine on the fingers. Add the yeast straight to it. And for all this flour, again, it's just less than 2 teaspoons of yeast.
And is that a particular brand of yeast that you have?
Leishman's Active Dry Yeast.
Okay, that's probably what you use. Huh?
So you don't want instant yeast.
Not like the packets.
Well, these come in packets too. It says this equals 16 envelopes.
Oh, so it's the same.
But they have different ones. I would just say look for Active Dry.
Okay.
That's what you want. So. Like I said, this mixture, of course, it's a lot more forceful than by hand. They'll do it less than 10 minutes. Basically, it's just enough time for everything to get smooth. You don't want to overwork the dough. You just want to bring it to exactly where it should be. It's because the more you knead it, the more it'll dry out, and the more chance you'll have of the dough being stressed and cracking when you're baking. So, as you keep working out, the more you work it, the more moisture is being worked in and out and everything. And so just let that go. And again, not very excited at this point, but do you have any questions or anything, or know about something? Or?
Anything? No. Pretty straightforward. So they make these machines in a smaller version that you can.
It's a 5-quart, which is just over a gallon type of bowl, and it'll come with. Usually they have 3 speeds and everything. You can get ones with a whisk, but usually they have different attachments. You can get the dough hook, that does a great job. But like I said, if I didn't have to make so much, we freeze ours too. I'll make it for 2 to 4 weeks or something worth. And if I didn't have to, I'd like to do it by hand rather. So it's, as opposed to mostly by machine and everything. But it doesn't really matter. It'll help. whatever you have is establish your system, and you just have to figure out, you know, how many minutes or how many strokes it takes to get your dough where you want it. So.
Now, our priest in Wisconsin, he used to he found he had the best success with freezing his dough, but was it, I mean, I guess he must have mixed it up and then froze it and then thawed it and stamped it and baked it. I'm not sure, but he always said that he froze his dough and it worked best for him, but I don't know what his method was.
This is our recipe. This is the way we do it. Like I said, the beginning with making it kind of like clay and then adding everything else when it's cooled down. But there's lots of different ways to do it. We do this one. We found it works the best in this manner for getting nice, you know, nice loaves that are, you know, they're still a little squishy, but for the most part they're pretty hard and solid.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Will you be stamping any dough at all?
Yeah.
You will be.
Yeah. Once we get this done, I'll take it out, let it rest no more than 10 minutes. Again, with this flour and this dough, I don't let it rest more than just to make it supple enough to smooth out and then stamp.
Mm-hmm.
So really the only rising that happens is during the mixing, a little bit while it's setting, and mostly in the oven.
Okay.
And there's various problems. You get email, right?
Yes.
Like, you can always keep in contact and say what's going wrong with it, because I inherited this from, you know, Archdeacon Sergius. Father Sergius taught me this 6-7 years ago or something here, and there are things that I mean, I'm not an experienced baker. I bake like fruitage and pound cakes and table bread and Prosphora, but I don't know the science to it. I guess there's really science to baking, and so I'd have problems that would go on for months, things cracking, or the doughs, you know, the loaves are all misshapen and everything, and couldn't figure out what I'm doing wrong, and I just, and so I have a little more understanding of what would need to be corrected with the dough or something, but by no means an expert. But if you have any questions, or, you know, when you start making it, just you know, be continuing the learning, you know, just thinking that, it's like, oh yeah, I ran into that problem, here's what you might have to do or something. So
Yeah, I think we'll probably do some